Are you over there playing with a cowboy gun?
I am.
Let me see it. What is that?
This is that right there is an old Navy revolver.
This isn't the black powder, is it?
No. So that one is. The one next to it's a black powder. That one's a 38 special.
Oh.
Yeah. But I love those old era guns.
You have some classic guns.
Yeah. Well, you know, what's awesome is so that's a really cool old revolver. I love those old era Western revolvers.
Yeah.
And then sitting right here is a shotgun that was given to me for my 50th by Skylar Rodoff.
Oh, I know. I saw that.
That thing's over 100 years old. Double barrel shotgun. It's amazing. And he restored it. He totally refinished it.
Skylar a gunsmith?
He has become one, self-taught. You know, it's kind of like Renaissance men, those dudes that Skylar's one of those guys. He can just watch 2 YouTube videos and then fix a tractor, restore a gun, and like he's that guy. He figures everything out like that. He can just do it.
You know, I know it's got its negatives, but where in the world would we be without YouTube?
Oh my goodness!
So
just the educational side.
Oh my gosh, home improvement stuff.
Oh,
so last week, my son's got an older car. It's got 164,000 miles on it, and a lot of stuff goes wrong at some point. I can do a little bit. We've talked about this, but I've had 5 or 6 a couple old trucks, and I can do a little bit. My goal, I can't like restore. What I tended to do when I started down that road, and I didn't have a lot of money to do it with, I started with an old Jeep that was $10,000, and I kind of finished it. I'm really good at little things. I can do a new gauge cluster. I can do new lights. I can do little things that accessories and stuff. And then I put it online, and a guy in Alabama bought it, and I still connect with him. By the way, he'll text me now and then pictures of the Jeep. And then I did it again, and I bought a 71 C10. It's a funny story behind that. Not that we were going to start with this, but I don't know where we're going. This is back when I'm with the Blazers, and I had gotten this idea that I got to get a Chevy C10, an old truck. And, I had found this one online. So at the same time, I had put my Jeep on, I think I put it on Auto Trader Classic. I didn't, I just put it on. So this guy in Alabama contacts me that he wants to buy the Jeep. And I said, okay. So he's like, well, I'm in Alabama. How do I do that? And I said, well, I know guys that do this, and, you can have it transported. And it's not a ton of money to have a car transported. At least it wasn't then. And we're talking, I don't know what it was, maybe 10 years ago. Wow, it's weird. But so at the same time, I'm negotiating on this truck online again with this truck that was out. It was in Southern Oregon, kind of rural Southern Oregon. And I get down to the point where, and I don't know that this guy in Southern Oregon knows who I am. I don't know that he watches TV or anything else. So I'm negotiating with him. Meanwhile, I'm in Houston because I'm on like game 4 of a 5-game road trip. And the guy in Alabama, he's like, I'm ready to do this. I want to like wire you the money. He goes, but my wife is like, you just going to wire this money to a stranger? Do you even know he exists? And I said, well, I wouldn't, number one, I'm not that kind of a guy. I know you can't just take my word for it. I said, and then it finally gets to the point, I said, would you look me up on Wikipedia real fast? And he goes, what are you talking about? I said, I couldn't hose you on this. Otherwise I would lose my job. And he goes, oh, okay. So anyway, it worked out. So I'm texting with, I don't know why this all happened when I was on the road. So finally I get a call from the car carrier guy, a text, a Russian guy. And for some reason, they have the market cornered on car carriers, especially in the Northwest. It's all Russian guys. And they're great at what they do. Huh. This guy texts and says, hey, I'll be at your house in and this is the next day, by the way. And the way that the deal gets done when you do it this way is you basically give the transporter the title. It then goes with the car, gets loaded on, and it was a Jeep, which it had a top, but it wasn't very good, so it had to be a closed carrier. So I said to the guy with the truck in Southern Oregon, I said, let me text you back when my Jeep, when I know it's done and the money is switched and the title goes. So I'm texting with, now we're in Memphis. I'm doing a game, Blazers, Grizzlies, and it's going to overtime. And
You're texting while the game's going on?
I'm calling this is not a lie. I'm calling the game. My wife sends a picture to my phone, which I'm holding in front of me while I'm calling a play. And it's a picture of the Jeep being loaded on the carrier. And she says, it's done. There goes the Jeep. I text the guy in Southern Oregon. And I said, okay, the deal's, and this is not during a timeout. This is during play in overtime. Big time game. Playoff implications. And I text him and I said, if I can have you, and we'd settled on a basic price. I said, I will have this check because he had somebody else interested. I was going to lose it and I wanted this truck. And I said, I will be on your doorstep tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. with this check. Can I buy it? If are we good? And so he says, yes. And then he texts back and he goes, you're in Memphis calling a Blazer game that I am watching. How are you going to be in Southern Oregon tomorrow morning at 10 a.m.? And I said, I will be. And he writes back and he goes, whatever. So we fly home from the road trip. We get home at 1:30 in the morning. And we had the next day off, obviously. So I get home. Wife thinks I'm nuts. I get up first thing. I bust down 4 hours or whatever it was to where I had to go off the beaten path. I stop by a Wells Fargo down there. I get a cashier's check. I go to the U-Haul. I get a flatbed trailer, and I am at his door by 10 a.m. And I buy the truck, put it on the trailer, and I drive home. And people thought I was crazy for doing that, but
that was a nice Jeep, by the way.
The Jeep was nice.
Jeep was awesome.
I liked the Jeep.
Yeah.
It wasn't, yes, it was nice. It was an 82 CJ7. And what I kind of learned about that is if you're in a small town and driving around neighborhoods, it's great.
Yeah.
But you can't exactly go buzzing down the freeway.
Yeah.
Which I did when I brought it home. And it had some issues with it. I bought it in Washington. I look back I didn't know much about any of that stuff then. Come to find out, they had done a lift on it without replacing the steering rod. Or without extending it. Yeah. Whew, if that would have popped off and I had my kids in the car, oh my gosh.
No cover, nothing.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, to the YouTube part of this, my son's car last week he's like, Dad, he's out. He calls me and he didn't want to tell me because we've had some issues, but it's an older car. These things all it's a chain reaction of stuff that goes wrong over time. And he says it's smoking. I said, well, pull over for a second. Is it smoking or is it steam? I don't know. He has somebody with him. It smells like coolant. And I said, oh, okay, you got a radiator. Your radiator's boiling. Have you been idling for a long time? Or he said, no, I've been driving. So anyway, I said, watch your temperature gauge. If it can stay below red, get the car home because I don't have to get it towed that way. And I'm already going in my head, what is it? Water pump? Is it alternator? Something has caused some belt or something has caused the car to stop. Somehow the radiators. So in the meantime, I'm searching up. Everybody's saying between 150 and 200, your radiator likely will go bad. The seals will start to leak. So anyway, I call a mechanic. I don't want to pay $1,000 to do this. I really don't. So I go on YouTube and I'm looking on how to replace radiators. Now I'm on the 5th video. And all these guys you got to take the front end off, bumper, wiring. And I'm like, I can't do that. I don't want to do that. I'll spend a week doing that. So I get to one guy's video, this guy who does all these, I love this guy, just kind of this dude, redneck, out in he finds a way to get stuff done. And he says, don't listen to the other videos. All you have to do, pull the hood latch, lift the crossbeam inside the engine, move it back, go underneath, and you're done. Pop the radiator in, connect the fans. It's like 5 or 6 connections. So I go, I can do this. So I order a radiator, go get it. And 3 hours later, I did it. And Carl is the man. Yeah, we were just talking about Carl. I was texting Carl saying, have you replaced a radiator? No. I texted my other car guys that I know, buddies of mine. No, I've never done that. Hoping secretly that one of them will say, I'll be right there. We'll get this done. But it just didn't happen. So I had to do it myself. Got it done, though. Got it done. And in my life, I have all of these things that I do now. Because obviously I don't work for the Blazers. I'm not in TV. I've been in this reinvention process of a bunch of different projects, most of which are pretty half-baked. So my struggle is I go day to day a lot, and I don't feel like I'm really accomplishing a ton. Now, could it be eventually? Yes, for all the projects. But right now it's not. And so the day-to-day struggle is what a lot of guys have. You know what I mean? When you're kind of stuck, you're not accomplishing much. It was amazing to me, the freedom and the peace and the happiness I felt by just doing something myself that was scary.
Yeah.
And I know replacing a radiator, if you're a mechanic and you're listening, you're laughing at me, but it is pretty stinking involved. I had to take a lot of stuff out of that engine with not knowing, when you get done doing something, you got a lot of extra parts.
Yeah.
And I thought, I hope I don't have a whole bunch of extra parts after that. I didn't. It all went back. And then the funniest part is after you do something like that, you're kind of surprised when it actually works and you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. So I'm calling my son the next day. What's your temp gauge like? He's like, it looks pretty good. I said, is it dripping anything? No. So I'm like, maybe I pulled this off.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah. So he got home the next day and I'm crawling around under his car. It would have taken a lot less time, but I put a brush guard.
Yeah.
Big brush guard on the front of his rig. So I had to take it off to get to the drip pan or the splash guard. Otherwise, it would have taken me 2 hours. Instead, it was an extra hour of taking a bunch of bolts out. But I don't want to jinx it, that doesn't exist. I shouldn't say that. To this day, I still go out there when he gets home, and I'm like,
is it still holding together?
Dang, I might have done this. It's not leaking stuff everywhere, and the coolant level is still pretty good. But anyway, so that has nothing to do with what we're going to talk about.
When you said that, we were talking about it last week. Your hands, you were showing me your hands. Your hands are all like scratched up. And
I have the most respect for mechanics and tradesmen. I really do.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They do it every day.
Every day.
But you were saying too, like you kind of pulled the car into your garage. You just had some music playing. George Strait.
Oh, I did talk about this, didn't I? Yeah.
Between us, we never shared it on the podcast.
I think we might have.
Oh, did we?
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's worth telling again. But the sense of accomplishment too, and the sense of like learning something and going looking at something, going, okay, I don't know anything about this yet, which is where the YouTubes come in, and you're like, man, it's been an empowering tool. Yes, we know there's a lot of bad rabbit holes you can go down, but it's become so empowering to educate people, inform them, and illustrate how to do things. And because the reason I say that, and this is totally, I don't know, we're going to go a different direction here in the podcast, but when we talk about masculinity, and men in general, there used to be, like we talked about the Carls and the Skylers, and these are men who have had to figure things out. You had to have looked at a challenge, an obstacle, adversity, and go, I don't know how to do this. And instead of going, well, I'm just going to give up, because we live in a day and age now where, and it's a blessing to be able to hire specialists. But at the same time, we live in an Uber, DoorDash culture that everything is so driven by convenience.
Instant gratification.
That we've lost the process of being self-taught, learning, the ingenuity, the creativity, the MacGyver-ish, like, well, let's figure this out. And there's something about that, well, one, makes us better because we learn new skills and things, but also it's a sense of satisfaction.
Yeah.
Of getting your hands dirty, get your mind around something and trying to figure it out and problem solve. And it's good for us.
I used a phrase in the last podcast about having what it takes. There's a certain, when that happens, and I'm like, open the hood. And I know a little bit. I'm not, it's not foreign to me to look under a hood. I know what everything is, and I have replaced a lot of stuff, but not really involved stuff. Doubting whether or not you have what it takes to do something like that, and then actually pulling it off. There is a lot of satisfaction in that. And I think about like people who live way out in the middle of nowhere, or even when we're out at the ranch at times, and something goes down, and those guys just go, well, we're going to fix it.
Yeah.
Get it, the duct tape, and
they do
some wrenches, and
Figure it out.
retrofit some stuff and make it work.
Yep.
And that's the way it used to be. And I think it was probably more that way when I was looking at a census the other day. And I'm not a big Ancestry.com guy. I used to have a guy who had a password to that. So I was messing around a little bit in there and looking at, and you look down at if you've ever looked at an old census from like late 1800s, early 1900s, everybody was a farmer. Everybody is listed down as a farmer. Guys were women too, but you think about the old farmers, you had to know how to fix everything.
Oh, absolutely.
You had to know how to do everything because there wasn't Amazon and there wasn't YouTube. And I hate that we've lost that.
Oh, and that's why I grew up in Southern Cal until I was a teenager. And then we moved to Canada, lived in a rural town of 3,000 and an hour from the nearest city. So it was all farmland. So I went to high school and I went to college with farmers. That was it. And I remember driving out to friend's house and they're 14 years old driving these massive tractors and their dads are out there fixing stuff. And the farms, they worked so hard. And yet it was like a playground. We did, I mean, it's dangerous, but we did stupid stuff. But that was all part of that. We've lost some of those things now. And not only have we lost it, quite frankly, our governments are attacking farmers. And
anybody who's self-reliant.
Anybody that's self-reliant is seen as, a threat to. Anyways, that's another podcast. But not really. I stay in the loop of these things because I have friends that are farmers. I'm not a farmer. I appreciate them, but if you pay attention to those things, that's what's happening, and which is a whole nother thing. But I love the idea of that it teaches you resilience. Mm-hmm. And because you face adversity, you face a challenge, and what happens is you have memory of other challenges that you had to overcome because you're like, okay, this broke down. Well, last time I had to fix it. And then you start building this kind of memory muscle of, oh, we face adversity. It's a challenge. Let's figure it out. And now we just kind of throw our hands up and give up. And I think there's something that it translates into your resilientness. When you just look at challenges, you're like, okay, let's persevere through this challenge.
And there was a degree of, and I was thinking about this when I was working on his car, and I'm on my back out of the car, and I did have a couple of little ramps. I had to get it in the air a little bit, but I'm under there, and it's hard to get to things, which is why my hands were all cut up, because I had to take the splash guard off. But some of the hoses that I had to reconnect to the radiator, and because it's an automatic transmission, there were 2 extra ones, and then I don't know, there's 5 or 6 connections plus wire connections. But some of the hoses weren't quite reaching the new radiator because the nozzles weren't quite as long. So I do them, stop. I get done. I'm like, good enough. That's good enough. Not perfect, but it's good enough. So I get up and walk away. And I go in the house and I'm like, you know what? I didn't do that. So I went back, replaced those hoses, did it right. So at the moment that I was tempted to compromise and shortcut it, I was prompted to, which made me feel even better, do it right.
Do it right.
Don't compromise. And that does kind of lead into what we're going to talk about a little bit in this podcast, which it's not about cars. I had no intention of bringing that up. But I thought about that when you were talking as it relates to how much we compromise, how it's kind of lazy and kind of chicken to compromise on things, especially when it comes, and it relates directly to this idea of, and you naturally brought up where I was going with a little bit of the government and stuff, and I'll get where I'm talking about with that, a moral compromise.
Yeah.
And the laziness and the lack of discipline we practice when we compromise morally.
Yeah.
Which I think is easier than ever today to do.
Yep.
And because of a lot of reasons. But the damage that causes, and I don't just mean societal, because yes, obviously it does there too, but internally.
Yeah.
And that's when I went back in the house. Now that's going to take me another hour, and another trip to the auto parts store to not compromise on this, to do it right.
Right, exactly.
Where the easiest thing would have been, and we all know, we just talked about it, instant gratification, and let's take the easy path. And it probably would have held, but there was something about, and I always admire the guys when they're doing something, they stop, this probably works, but nope, let's do this right. Even though nobody's looking, even though it probably will work, I'm going to do this correctly.
Yeah.
So this plague in our society, among everybody, but I think, and because we're men, we always go back to men, but especially among men, of the damage of compromise in our lives.
Yeah. And when you were saying, hey, let's do a podcast on compromise, what came to my mind is everything you just said is you compromise your convictions. And so you have to start with, what's the moral compass? What's your conviction? Because you don't compromise what you don't have a conviction about. Otherwise, it's not a compromise. The word by compromise means, by definition, that you are giving up, you are placating, you are forfeiting to what is of your value system, your morals. So it kind of raises a lot of questions. Like, it raises two questions in my mind. Number one is, where are you getting your moral compass?
Mm-hmm.
And number two is, what's causing you to drift from there? And I was just in Rwanda, and they asked to do a leadership thing, and I was like, okay, I wasn't planning on that before I got there. So I'm sitting there one morning, and I'm like, okay, I got to go speak on leadership in a couple hours, and I just felt like, and I talked about the slow drift and the idea that what ends up happening is a compromise, and you can see this with moral failures. You see this with people who are, they wake up one day, and you go, oh my gosh, they fell away, they committed that, they did those things. And this is why we have such a complete crisis of trust in institutions today, because we've seen leaders who have compromised. Mm-hmm. We've seen political leaders. You and I were talking about one before we were on air, who they were standing for something, and now they got into a role, and you're like, gosh, they're placating and compromising.
One little step over the line.
That's it. And you see this in churches, you see this in businesses, you see this in homes, you see this in government. Wherever there's leadership, there can be compromise. Even on a personal level, just as a person, am I taking the little shortcuts? And it's just one little compromise, one little justification, and you get off track. It's the analogy of, if I'm sitting here and I'm in a boat or an airplane, and I just go off course, just a hair. It's not that big a deal. But if you now stay on that course, a mile, 10 miles, 20 miles down the road, I'm completely off path.
Yeah.
And that's how for all of us, it's one simple justification, one simple little which means we need course corrections every single day to get back into alignment. But
and even more so for people who are in positions of power and influence, how detrimental that is, not only to them, but to the people they serve. But I thought about this moral compromise thing the other night. Do you ever watch Suits?
Oh, yeah, totally.
So we're big into Suits now. And my wife and I don't really get into series. She'll watch The Bachelor or Bachelorette, but she goes to bed or falls asleep usually when we start anything. We watched all of Yellowstone. We watched 1883. We watched, all those. But we really hadn't had a show. And then somebody said, and I just had never really watched Suits. Well, if you haven't watched Suits, it's a big law firm in New York. And I'm hard on lawyers. Everybody is. There's lawyer jokes and everything else. But I have respect for them. Great respect. When I watched what that show does a good job of, in all of the various things they run into, like a series does, how easy it is and how tempting it can be to compromise.
Yeah.
And these are lawyers, and they face great risk, because even if their motives are correct, and I realize I'm learning more about lawyers as I'm watching this show, even if oftentimes their intentions are good, but if they make one little mistake, they go to jail. I mean, it's a big deal, disbarred, jail, everything else. But in that show, what they are constantly faced with, among other things, is the idea that if something presents itself that could make something really easy make a lot of money if they're willing to take one little step over the line that they probably will get away with.
Exactly.
And that maybe nobody will know about. But they know then internally they've crossed that line.
Absolutely.
And once you cross that line, it becomes a lot easier to do it a second time and a third time. And the way the implications and the comparisons and the analogies are obvious here for any other walk of life. And then you said the justifications. So we know people, and everybody probably knows somebody who has a situation or a couple in their life, or maybe you don't know, where there's been some infidelity or a text message chain that's turned into something more destructive. And it's amazing to me how talking to some of these guys, in this case, because that's who I talk to about this stuff, who've kind of gotten into this or they wake up and go, how did I get here? I'm a good person. How did I get to this point where I woke up one day and I'm 7 miles from home? Because I took that first step of moral compromise and I got over the line on something. I didn't mean for it to. It was innocent. But usually, if they talk about it for half an hour, it comes back to the first time that they compromised their morality, stepped over a line just slightly, and then what it turned into. And the discipline it takes and the self-awareness it takes to know what your limits are. And you've talked before about, to your staff at church, the males specifically, what are your weak points? What you're talking about and what you're mentioning at those times is, what are the things that will lead to moral compromise? And if you don't know what they are, especially at the time, you got to know these things because you're no better than the next guy. And everybody can do that and you can judge. But we're all going to be placed in positions where, I mean, even something not as vital or as important as the fidelity of a marriage, he's going to kill me, but back to my son's car again. A couple weeks ago, I don't think he listens to the podcast, so whatever. So we're in church and we bring separate cars. We're not very far from church. But you know me, I like to get there really early. So I get over there really early. I talk to people. I get a cup of coffee. I just like being early. It's part of I'm early to a fault. I drive my wife nuts. So half the time, rather than me feel like I'm creating everybody to have to rush and leave as early as I want to, I'll meet you there. So anyway, my son brings my wife in his car. Now, as I just mentioned a minute ago, his car is older. It does not have a backup camera. So he backs up. I get a phone call. I'm talking to somebody after church. And I don't think I've even told you this. So he calls me in church and says, or my wife calls me and goes, Jack just backed into somebody's car. And I said, oh, crap. I said, did they damage it? Not really. His taillight is broken, which I've already replaced the right taillight because he broke that one. And now now the left one's broken. So I get out there and he's kind of shaken up. He's mad at himself. Why did I do that? I was backing up. Turns out it really didn't damage the other car, but it broke his taillight. And I look at the truck that he had backed into. There's a scratch on it was a big truck. His car is smaller. His taillight perfectly hit the license plate. That was it. But it did scratch the license plate holder, the frame.
Yeah.
And it kind of dented the license plate. So then you go,
yep. We've all been there.
Let me see. Is this important enough? And I didn't question it in my mind for more than 2 seconds. Of course, I find whose truck this is. Well, I step back. I look at the truck and I go, this is Travis's truck.
No way.
Yes. He's a friend of ours.
A very good friend.
Yes. I'm looking at these beautiful knives that he made for you, right to our right. And I'm like, I would have anyway found who it was. And no big deal. Got him a license plate. And Travis is awesome. He didn't care. But for my son, I said, you gotta call Travis and text him or whatever tell him what happened. Tell him you'll do whatever you need to do to make this right.
Wow.
I didn't know I was going to wade into this, but it does. Everybody's probably had that happen.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Do you leave the note or do you not? Even if the car doesn't look like anything really happened, you probably shouldn't compromise your morality. And so I would like to think there was a little lesson there. It happened to be a friend of mine's truck who's an awesome brother. So it was no big deal. He laughed about it. And dented the license plate. It was a Blazers license plate, so I really didn't care. But it had a dent in it, and it kind of scuffed up the license plate frame, which is more than a frame. It's like a holder, It was a brand new, and I know that truck he loves his truck, and so I went, oh crap. So anyway, the lesson there for my son was never compromise morality, even if he would never have noticed, or if maybe down the road he would have noticed. So I know that's a stretch to go from suits and lawyers to this, but it's all the same thing.
But it's not. It's the same thing, and it's because if you're not a man of integrity with the small things, you won't be a man of integrity with the big things. And it's easy to write off the little thing. It's fun. I wasn't going to say this either, but you brought this up. This is full confessional now.
Yeah, it is now.
So this was right before Christmas. I pulled into Cabela's. I was driving back from a Blazer game, and I was rushing around it was like Christmas shopping. So I pull into Cabela's, and it's at nighttime. I mean, it's pitch black. They're lighting in the parking lot so. So I pull my truck in.
You're not in your 72, are you?
No, thankfully
goodness.
not.
Yeah.
No, although
it would have been harder than to not compromise.
I parked my 72 in a parking lot the other day, and some guy, I saw him get out of his car and hit it with the door, and I was like, everything inside was like, dude, did you not see? Like, there's a million other parking spots.
He door dinged you?
He didn't. I mean, it hit my car, but it didn't leave a mark. But I had that in me, like, dude, seriously, like. There's a million parking. Why'd you have to park right next to the old classic truck? But thankfully it didn't leave a mark. And
then you see the little kid in the back, and you know they're just going to kick that door open at 30 miles an hour and smoke the side of your truck.
Oh, I had all. I came really face to face with that little in me that don't mess with the truck, the old truck. But fortunately this was my 2008 Tundra. And here's the interesting thing. So it's dark. It's pitch black. It's raining, by the way. It's pouring rain. So I get out of my truck, and as I pass, there's no one parked to me. There's no one on my left, no one on my right, and I'm backed in. So when I leave, all I have to do is pull forward, right? When I come out,
every real man backs in. Just so you know.
Well, I think I pulled through on this one, so it looked like I backed in, but I was ready to go. So I come out of Cabela's, I jump in my truck, not seeing on the other side of my truck was this tiny little old beater black, and it was just an old sports car, like old 80s rundown, black lowered, so it was like it blended in with the black top. So I go to pull out, and as I pull out, my front right tire, my front right wheel catches the bumper.
I've done that, and
just enough to glance it. I mean, honestly, I could have just pulled away. And no harm, no foul. But I was like, I think I hit that car. And I get out, I go around. I'm like, sure enough, I did. And then I had that moment where like, the question was, do you do something?
No.
So then I'm like, you know what? Because here's the thing. The Bible says, obviously we know that God is watching, so you're not really hiding from anybody. And the definition of integrity is you're the same person in private that you are in public. And so, I'm having these thoughts of like, really, this is a test, right? I'm almost like annoyed, but then I'm like, Lord, okay. So I get the piece of paper out and I write my number. I said, I'm sorry. Here's my phone number. And because I'm like, there's a bunch of other stores there. And I get back in my truck and I'm getting ready to drive away and I go, I don't know. So then I'm like, I'm feeling it. So I get out of my truck again. I walk into Cabela's. I go to customer service. I go, here's my phone number. I don't know. Somebody comes out there and they come back in. And then I don't know why I did. And then I'm walking through the store going, well, let me at least ask 4 or 5 people. Is that your car? Whatever. Nobody, it was. Anyways, all I had to say was I pull away and I'm just trying to get home, and it's a busy day. My phone rings. And the guy says, hey, this is whatever his name was. He says, your Mike left a note. I go, yeah. I go, man, I'm sorry. I didn't see it. He goes, this is his exact word. He goes, thanks for leaving a note. He goes, most people probably would have just drove off and not done that. And I had this part of me where I didn't go far enough, but I just felt convicted. I felt like God in that moment was saying, I'm testing you right now. And how are you going to handle this? Because I have failed that test in so many other ways. You know, the little things where you don't even think about it.
Sure.
You're like, oh, I did something, look back and go, oh, maybe I didn't do that right. That wasn't this or that. We all have those
But
conversations.
at the time, you justify it to yourself.
Oh, 100%. And it can
you
be just
lie
the
to yourself.
little things, the little lies, the little, again, compromises, the little justifications. And anyways, I didn't even think about it until you brought that up with Jack. But you taught Jack a valuable lesson as a man to own it, to be a man of conviction, which means a man of honesty, a man of integrity. Because we're kind of trying to unpack a little bit here. What does it mean to be a man that doesn't compromise? So what would you say? We all struggle with the temptation to compromise, but what would you say helps us not be men of compromise?
Phew, that's tough. It really is. And I'd like to think that everybody has the moral fabric, and at least is I think that if you're somebody who's a believer, as you just said, I think the old cliche of, and it almost works in this case, taking every thought captive. And I think if you do that, and I try to do that with myself, because even at that moment when he backed in and I looked at, before I realized it was Travis's truck, I was like, there really isn't anything. Could we just drive away? Yes. Partly because I think I would like to have I know I would have. If I'd have been alone, I would have done the same thing. The fact that I could make it a teaching moment. But in terms of how to help others in that, I other than trying to follow the word and trying to be moral in all things and not crossing any lines, I think that's the discipline you have to practice. But I do think it takes discipline. And especially these days, it feels like that discipline and that moral compass, as you mentioned a minute ago, to make sure it has not ossified on you and you're not in a position. I just think the biggest thing is to, and I threw it out, taking every thought captive. The only reason I said that is slow down and stop, because your mind is going to, at those moments, try to make you think, or justify things and shortcut things. And so for me, I think there are a lot of people who wouldn't do that. And I was one time in a parking lot where a lady pulled in next to me, and I was in the car, probably texting, just sitting there, and just wham, the door just nails the side of my car. I mean, I heard it. And I of course I was ticked, and she got out of her car real fast and just started to walk in the store. And I opened my door and I just said, ma'am, I said, you really slammed my door and made a dent. No, I didn't. And I said, okay, I was sitting here though. My car moved. It rocked back and forth. You hit it so hard. And she yelled, swore at me and started to walk really fast. And I just let it go. I was like, whatever, I'm not going to. But so I'd like to think that most people have, and I'd like to think maybe even she got in the store and thought, I shouldn't have done that. But I'm not sure if that was the case. So in terms of something to inspire people, I don't know, other than, there's slowing down at those moments.
There's a verse in the Bible that scares me. I remember as a young man, there's a verse in the Bible that says, your sins will find you out.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, wow, what a sobering thought of, and I don't know, there's been multiple times in my life where, I'll be as a pastor, in a convenience store. And, I remember one time when I was young, and I remember walking by a magazine aisle. I don't know how young I was, but I was a young pastor. I walked by a magazine aisle, and there was those magazines. And the thought came to my mind, hey, go wander and drift, and not even pull one off the rack and open it up in the store, but I could go wander over there and just stand and stare and da-da-da-da-da. And there happened to be another woman, a stranger I never saw, was looking at the magazines, and she was shopping in that magazine section, not looking at those magazines, but she was in that section. And I remember when the thought came to my mind, hey, Mike, you can just drift over. pretend like you're looking at the Home and Garden right next to the Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition, you know, and
Yeah.
I could fake this, right? And that thought's come to my head. Like I could, again, the justification, nobody's looking.
Yeah.
I'm not really pulling it out, you know, and looking at the magazine. I'm leaving it on the, I mean, all those little things. And all of a sudden that woman goes, Pastor Mike.
Oh.
And I remember walking out of the store, and the Lord just had this little funny moment with me of just like, he's always watching, whether there was a woman there or not. The point of it is am I living a consistent life with my moral compass, my value system in private equally as in publicly? And now here's the crazy thing. This blew me away. 2 years ago, I'm studying the Bible, and I'm reading through a passage of scripture where it says effeminate men, and it's talking about evil and sin, and it talks about effeminate men amongst all these other categories. And I'm like, and so I looked up the word effeminate, which is sometimes is translated like homosexuality and things like that. And I started doing really a deep dive research on what is Paul saying by effeminate men? What is that word effeminate in the Greek? And actually, it shocked me. Sometimes it can be the word effeminate in the Greek culture. We think, when I hear, hey, that's an effeminate man, we think a feminine type man, like feministic type tendencies. And so we assume that. That's not the way the early Greeks would always use that word. Sometimes, do you know the majority of the time in the Greek culture when they would talk about effeminate, it meant a man of weak values. It meant a man who had weak moral compass. It meant a man who had weakness when it came to his convictions. So technically, and there's been other, now I've found out research articles and journals on this, but actually what Paul was getting at is an effeminate man in the Greek culture. Sure, sometimes it might be used but really majority of the time it was a man who had weakness when it came to his convictions. And so I started in the last couple of years redefining effeminate men. So now oftentimes we can look at a dude that's like, well, like us, bear trucks and, you know, hunting and outdoor and everything kind of oozes and is masculine, right? And then we can look at some guy who might be sensitive and artistic, and, you know, we might think all those sort of things, well, he's not as masculine. But actually, by that definition, you can have a dude that has all the external masculine, raw, whatever, and he's the most effeminate man.
Yeah.
Why is he effeminate man? Because he's weak when it comes to his convictions. And so it has rocked now I go, don't judge a book by its cover, judge a book by its conviction.
Absolutely.
And
No,
go,
that makes sense.
You're an effeminate man. What? No, I'm not. It's like, dude, you're an effeminate man. You are not holding to your convictions. You are weak when it comes to the things you say you value, whether it's the integrity pieces, the character pieces, and then you can have a dude that's the most non-effeminate man by all definitions of that new term. And so that's just rocked my world.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought of it. I know we had mentioned that, but for some reason our conversation got stopped before you could tell me what the Greek was for that, which this shocks me how many times and I love how you as a pastor, you really dive into, because we know that there's translations of the Bible and a lot of people look at it and go, well, this means this. And then you go, well, not really. I mean, if you really look at the intent and the word that was used and they did their best when they translated, but sometimes some of that stuff gets lost. You know, you were talking about on this topic, we were talking about cars and backing into somebody. A lot of times, if there is a lapse in moral judgment or follow through, and I was trying to think of, and you ripped off some scripture a minute ago on this. I think in some cases, if it is a car situation, will it cost you reputationally, which in your case it would, or will it cost you monetarily? And so in a case where we all know, like with cars, sometimes it can look like nothing, but, oh, by the way, I need a new quarter panel, and that's $7,500 or something, you know, turns into something else. So I think one thing with me, and we have a friend who used this verse when we were talking about, this had more to do with tithing, but I think it relates to everything we were just talking about. And that's an old verse in Malachi.
Yeah.
In Malachi 3.
Yep.
Will a mere mortal rob God? Yet you rob me.
Yeah.
Well, you put it in those terms as it relates to morality, not financially, even though that does play in here.
Yeah.
I look at a case of moral compromise. You're robbing God at that moment. And and then to go off what you said, he sees it and he knows it.
Totally.
So Mr. Sneaky Pants, you're not actually sneaky.
Totally.
He's seeing it and you're robbing him.
Absolutely.
Now, doesn't just mean monetarily, robbing him of glory, robbing him of reputation.
Totally.
All of that stuff. That I think for me is a pretty good incentive in that case.
Ooh, I like that. I had never thought of that in that context, because you're right. If I, especially if I'm a professing follower of Jesus, like, hey, and by the way, none of us are perfect. We're not talking about perfection here. When we talk about compromise, what we're talking about is character.
Yeah.
And we're talking about, listen, if you screw up, just own it. That's not compromise. Look, we're going to make mistakes. We're imperfect. We're going to be like, oh shoot, I didn't do that right, or you didn't, whatever. But I'm gonna go back and own it and say, hey, actually, I've exaggerated on that. I'm gonna go back and say, in the moment, I got caught up in storytelling. I got caught up in exaggerating numbers on a sales meeting. Those are the things we're talking about. And in your heart later, like, oh man, I think I wasn't a man of integrity there. I wasn't a man that held true. I compromised. I compromised. Great, own it. God's forgiveness is there. Now, sometimes it comes with consequences, but still, you can move forward. But I love that verse, because if I'm someone who professes to be a follower of Jesus, what's on the line more than what cost me financially? What's on the line more than even my reputation is I rob God of his reputation.
Exactly.
I didn't.
Everybody uses that monetarily.
Yeah.
And I think that's an old, probably pastors use it to maybe guilt parishioners into, let's pass that plate again and let me give you a little verse out of Malachi.
Exactly. Yeah.
And this is pre-tax, by the way. This is not, but that's not the way I read that. That's not the way I heard that. And when our buddy used it, when he was talking about it in the context of giving and being generous, I thought of it the other way. Exactly. I thought of it as robbing God, as you just said, of his glory and who he is. And so maybe if you don't even feel morally strong enough that you would stop yourself and check yourself, well, then think of it in those terms, and maybe that'll inspire you.
Exactly. I love that. I've never thought of that until you put it that way, like using that passage and robbing God. And because you're robbing God of a lot of things, and that especially robbing him of his character,
reputation,
his reputation. That's exactly what that is. So when you think of compromise too, I think of idea that for many of us. So here's one too. You referenced it earlier. We sat down with this was years ago. I sat down with the men on our staff, and I said, we got into a room, and it was like 6 or 7 pastors, and I said, hey, are you self-aware enough that you would know when you would compromise your fidelity?
What's your line?
What's your line?
What's your line in the sand?
What's your line in the sand? And do you know yourself well enough? Do you know your triggers of compromise? And I think that's the other piece of it, is because I might be compromising, not even aware of it. And I might be totally ignorant of, oh man, I'm going to run this right to the line. It's like, why do you want to ride it to the line? And why not back up and stay away from the line as much as possible? Because that's what happens. There's a tipping point.
Sure.
You send a text to her, and she sends a text back to you. And
you know when you're crossing that line, too.
You know. That's what I'm saying. You know.
You know when you're approaching the line.
Absolutely. 100%. It's the little flirty thing, or it's, I'm gonna throw this out there and fish a little bit, and
it's harmless.
Yeah, it's harmless. I'm just being encouraging.
But won't it feel good if she actually returns it in the right way, and then you feel good about yourself?
Totally.
But you don't think about what the next step is.
Exactly. And you're just like, you're opening that Pandora's box, and it could be anything. Like I said earlier, it could be your sales meetings, and you walk in and you're like, are you fudging on stuff? Are you just trying to, change the numbers to make it look good in your favor? pastors all the time say, how many people do you have come to church this weekend? It's like, well, what number are you going to use? What number do you want to use?
Right.
And there's all those. I like Jim, who's a good friend of ours. Jim talks about the power of truth all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And how easy exaggeration we justify. Well, it's just exaggeration.
Exaggerating is lying.
It's lying. It just is lying.
I try to tell my kids that. And that came from Jim.
Yeah. No.
Because I know a lot of people that exaggerate. And once you know a friend who exaggerates, every story they then tell you, you cut in half.
Yeah, oh, that's so true. He said the one story, he was out fishing and
fishing stories.
His fishing story and some guys with, and he was like talking about, and Jim tells this story. I really appreciate it. He's like, and he exaggerated. He exaggerated about the size of a fish that he caught, whatever. And he felt convicted, like called the guy.
Yeah.
It was like the next day. He's like, hey, you know what? I felt convicted. I exaggerated. I was like, and that's the other side of it is I'm hoping that I get to a point where I catch those quicker. Because there's all those things where you exaggerate and then you're like, oh, okay. And then you look back and go, oh, I stretched that probably. I don't know. And then you move on. I'm like, okay, I just want to get to a point where I catch it more in the moment and I can course correct lives right there in that moment, not have to go back.
Even if there's no real harm to it.
Yeah.
Because you go, I was just telling a story, and it made the story a little more exciting if I said it this way, and it's not going to hurt anybody.
Right.
But that's one of those compromises.
It is.
I mean, I know I don't want to sound nerdy, but even on stuff like that. And then this is another Jim story, but I love it because this illustrates a harmless exaggeration. And it's not like it could have turned into something else, but he caught it. Jim's whipping out to the ranch, driving too fast, which he is wont to do. And he gets pulled over by a cop. And the guy lets him off. And Jim says, hey, I really appreciate you guys. I pray for you guys all the time. He goes on. His wife down the road, 10 miles, goes, do you really pray for them all the time? And he goes, well, she goes, or did you just say that because it made you feel good? So Jim then made it a point over the next 2 years to find that officer. I don't know if you ever found him or not, and tell him, hey, I should pray for you all the time, but I lied.
Wow.
I don't pray for you all the time.
Whoa.
I know that's taking it.
But here's the thing.
It's taking it way down the road. I get it.
Right. But, and that, I think that story serves all of us a purpose. That's the first time I've heard that one.
Oh, I love that story.
And now I'm going, now that I have that story in my head, I'm now more mindful. And I think that's the thing is like, yeah, that might be an extreme, or maybe it's not. Maybe that's what he needed to do for his own character development. And because I think, how many times has somebody, we say something, then we look back and we go, oh, that's okay, and I'm not going to worry about it. But that's those justifications. And at some point you got to go, okay, I'm stopping with the justifications. And if I have to do something so extreme right now to change the way that I keep justifying,
yes,
then great, do the extreme correction.
Yes.
Just to go, gosh, it's become such a habit. I need to do something extreme to change those habits. So I would, maybe for him, good for him for trying. Maybe it'll never happen. That doesn't matter. The point is he's trying. The other thing on compromise too that I was, and this will be for another podcast, but we talk about the daily compromises that we can all cater to, the justifications. I think another side of compromise is standing firm when you face challenge and opposition to your values.
Totally.
So there's the character integrity piece. We've been talking about that.
Now and that's uncomfortable.
The courage piece. The courage piece. Character, we talked about. Courage to say, no, I believe in Jesus. I'm not, as Paul said, I'm not ashamed of the gospel. And so therefore, wherever I'm working, relationships I have, we live in a culture that's becoming more what we call secular, post-Christian, where you have the president's going to say something, or someone who works for the president will say something about new holidays on Easter. We just talked about that. And you speak out against that. Well, we don't
then
speak out.
Then you get classified. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just saying, as an example, it's going to get more and more unpopular to be someone that says, here's what I believe based on my faith, with humility, not arrogance or pride, but I'm going to stand strong. And I love, there's a verse in the Bible where Paul says, stand strong, be a man. That's what it says.
Love that.
Stand strong, be a man. And then right after it says, and love everybody. So I think it captures the essence of that. But he goes, be a man. And being a man means standing strong, not backing down, not being arrogant, not being prideful, not being combative. But it means like I'm not going to waver on what I believe, even if it's unpopular, even if people, I might come to a point. Just the other day, I heard a guy that he's friends of ours went to London. They told me the story. They said they got in with this Uber driver, and the Uber driver doesn't know they're believers and starts sharing Jesus with them. And so this is the whole story. This is crazy. And so the Uber driver's like trying to like share the gospel with them, and then they tell him, "Hey, we're believers. I was a pastor," and they were just, then they all kind of like laughed, and he's like, and the Uber driver who's in London, he's like, he goes, my goal is everybody that gets in my car, I tell them about Jesus. To which even right now, I know there's a lot of Christians who would be like, well, don't do that. That's inappropriate and whatever. And this guy goes, no, that's my mission field. That's what God called. That's my mission field.
You signed up for this.
And he does it. He's not combative about it. He's just, in his own way, he brings Jesus into the conversation, and he feels that's, and the guy went on to say that his boss calls him and says, dude, you got to stop telling people about Jesus. And here's this guy, and he told his boss, he's like, hey, I'll just work somewhere else if it's a problem. And the boss said, well, okay, don't worry about it. And he just said, I'm not going to compromise.
Yeah, that's not compromising.
No, I feel like, again, he wasn't being arrogant. He wasn't being, whatever about it, but he was a conviction. He felt God wants me to tell people about Jesus. And every person that gets in my car, I'm gonna use that as an opportunity. And I go, whatever, regardless of some people think, I go, man, look at that! How awesome that you weren't ashamed.
And most people respect that.
Exactly.
And another, do you remember the verse that I put on that wooden thing that I made for your birthday?
Yes, absolutely.
2 Timothy 4:2, which relates directly to what you said a moment ago. Now, it not only has to do with approaching compromise, but it's funny you shared the story about the Uber driver. So 2 Timothy 4:2, preach the word, be prepared in season and out of season. In other words, wherever you're at, correct, rebuke, and encourage with great patience and careful instruction.
Yep.
And I gave that to you because I feel like that's a very appropriate pastor's verse. But it also, the part where it says, and I always do this, I love taking verses apart. So when talking about moral compromise, the situations you're in, backing into a car, somebody flips you off and you're tempted to flip them off back, which we all know what happens. But I love the section, be prepared. In other words, be mindful, always be aware in the moment, in season and out of season.
Yeah.
With the word.
Yeah.
Be it to somebody else or to yourself.
Yep.
That can help you have strong moral fiber to where you won't step over that first line.
100%. And that's why that verse, by the way, when it says in season, out of season, it means literally in season means there's favor.
Yeah, what does that mean? I don't know.
Yeah, the in season means that there's favor, meaning like you're speaking to an audience and they're just responding with favor. There's a response that's like, yes. The out of season means when there's hostility.
I mean, you're an Uber driver and your boss is threatening
That's
you.
it. That's literally what that verse means. It's not just for pastors. It's saying, listen, out of season is when it's unpopular, when it's not favorable. Be consistent by sharing the word. And what's interesting is when we don't compromise our convictions, God uses us to be the conviction to the world. What all I mean by that is there's a verse where Jesus said that the Holy Spirit, the Spirit convicts the world of sin, morality, righteousness, morality, and judgment. And you have to ask the question, what's the role of us as Jesus followers in a world of evil where the world now is calling evil good and good evil?
For sure.
So we're living in a society that is redefining morality, calling good evil and evil good. And a lot of Christians are like, well, I don't want to offend anybody. This is compromise. So there's a cultural compromise where it's like, well, I don't want to offend anybody. I don't want to say anything. But actually, the Bible tells us that the Spirit of God, well, how does the Holy Spirit do that? He does it through us. So when we live out, again, it's with humility, it's with love, it's not being arrogant, boastful, prideful, combative. But when we are courageously living out our conviction, not compromising our convictions, it actually tells us that God uses us as a conscience to the world. And that word for convicts the world of sin, it says, it's the real meaning of that word, convinces the world of sin. It recorrects the world of sin. So if I'm compromising and I'm being a cowardice and not willing to speak truth in my convictions, then I actually limit the way that God can bring correction, conviction to what the immorality of the world is. So again, not compromise, it's a character issue. It's also a courageous issue.
And I had one point I had thought about earlier. We compromise a lot of times. This can be through exaggeration or whatever. We compromise because we seek the affirmation of our friends.
That's true. Yep. Absolutely. That's 100% in every way, both on the character side and on the courage side. We want to please people. We want everybody to like us.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, there's only one person that we should care about more. And I said a quote this way: we care more about offending people than we care about offending God.
For sure. Audience of one.
Audience of one.
I tried to tell kids that one time when I was speaking at something about an audience of one. I hope that made sense. It makes sense to me now. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure it would have then. And I think a lot of times as we wrap up, I guess we're getting there. It's amazing how much longer we go these days, but I don't care. It used to be like 30 minutes. Now we're easily plus an hour plus every time. But in terms of, you talked about leaders, and you see somebody get elected and they change. And it's so financially based. To watch them compromise. They get captured.
Yep.
And I know that we throw that term around a lot, and people had even said that about, well, all kinds of, they were saying it about Mike Johnson right now, the majority leader. He's been captured. And Mike was the most conservative guy, and he stood on his morals, and very Christian, outspoken. And then now he's doing all this stuff that's crazy, and everybody's going, what happened? Did you get captured? You're compromising? What is it based on?
Yeah.
And of course, there's a whole nother down rabbit hole about how the deep state can get you and control you, and maybe that's what's happened. I don't know. But what is it? And this is, again, I don't want to open a whole nother thing, but I oftentimes look at people like that, and I think, what is it that makes you compromise everything that you've done in your career and who you are that quickly to where all of a sudden you've just compromised not only your morality, your family, your name.
Yeah.
What is it? What has that power?
Well, I think the first thing that comes to my mind is Peter compromised.
Yes.
When and Jesus said, "You're going to deny me 3 times." Like, no, I'm not. I'm your wingman. I got you, Jesus. And then what does he do? When the pressure was on, and I think that's where compromise comes into the equation when it's going to cost me something.
For sure.
That's where compromise. So I either gain or I lose in a compromising situation.
And costing you something might just be you're looked at differently.
Exactly. You're looked at differently.
You're labeled.
It's like, yep. So ask yourself this question. Do you feel you're going to lose something or something's going to cost you? Because that's probably the playground for compromise.
And be aware enough to see that on the map coming down the road.
Yep.
That's the thing that I think traps people. Sometimes it's living in denial. Sometimes you know it is, you just don't want to think about it.
Yeah.
Other times you find yourself into something. How did I get here? I got 14 women I'm texting. How did that even happen? And with most guys like that, you can look back and go, well, one time I stepped over the line, I justified it, and it's a slippery slope, and now I'm 10 miles from home.
Yeah.
And I feel bad for those people. But even if you're in that situation, get out of it.
Yeah. Make your way back. There's always a way
rebuild
back
that morality.
That's right. That I'm so glad you said that. That's actually a good way to end, because we have seen leader after leader after leader after leader fall, compromise, and people write them off in cancel culture. And that's, I think, one of the reasons we fear the course correction is, okay, if I come clean, I'm going to be canceled. The reality is this: you might be. But what I see in the Bible is the story with Peter. God restores him. God restores him. No matter how far Peter compromised and fell away, God says, Peter, I'm not done with you yet. There's always an opportunity to come back, be restored, find God's purpose back in your life, and watch what he can do. That he can restore anybody back from compromise, and we just have to desire it at the same time.
Look at David.
Oh, which, by the way,
Yeah.
last thing I'm going to say, punctuation mark on this whole thing, you had a quote about David and Goliath. Share that quote as we wrap up.
David defeated Goliath, but lost to Bathsheba.
You said that the other day. I went, whoa.
We were talking about that in another context, but when I want to do a podcast on that, as uncomfortable as it might be.
Yep.
And again, it's not pointing the finger at anybody, but I'll see things once in a while, or I'll see things that shake me or that make me go, whoa. But when you think about that, and let's talk about it, in terms of sexual, not that she was a woman, but that it was sexual immorality. It was a compromise of morals by David, who had beaten Goliath, had gotten ordained to be this powerful leader, and spying one woman in a bathtub when he shouldn't have been looking, took it down.
Yep.
Where he compromised not only his position, one of his buddies.
Yeah. Yep. And I think in that case, another path to compromise is entitlement.
Yeah.
And in like David's case, he's the king. He felt entitled. He had the power to act on the entitlement, and commits murder because he plotted against her husband, Uriah. Next thing you know, and man, I think that's the other thing, is entitlement leads us down a path of compromise, and justifications, entitlement, all those things. It's what makes us potentially weak, effeminate men.
And over that shame and knowing he was caught, put another innocent man.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what's crazy. And here, I'll end with this. You always hear us talking about something, and we'll start off with my son's car and a radiator and something else. There is a verse and a situation and a scenario in the Word every time that relates to it. So if you're not in the Word, and we mentioned this too, you'll find an answer for everything you're facing in there. And you might think it's these ancient situations that have nothing to do with me today, that couldn't be further from the truth. And the more you get into it, the more, and if you're armed with it and you have an answer for every one of those situations, that is probably the best way to stay uncompromised, morally speaking. And it shocks me at times, because we think of these primitive people who there's no way they could be facing what I'm facing. No, they're all in there.
Yeah.
Every story is in there, and they're not always great. And you're let down by heroes in there. Yeah. You're let down by people you held in high esteem, but they're rebuilt.
Yeah. Wow. That's good.
Peacing out.
Well, last thing, now we're going down a new path.
I know.
Samson.
Yeah.
And Samson was the man of power, anointing, all this. He was considered, at that time, they didn't have king judges, so he's in crazy top leadership. I mean, if you know the story of Samson in the Bible, it's like Hercules in the Bible, amazing, whatever. And then he has this one compromise, Delilah. And what happened in that moment was he made her opinion of him more important than God's opinion of him. And he catered to what her requests were, and that was his demise. Compromise, and it started slow, little. You read the whole story of Samson, it's compromise, and he wakes up one day, and it's to his doom that happened. But I think the slippery slope for him was entitlement. He got pride and arrogant because he thought, oh, I'm all that now. I'm entitled. And then he justified and said, oh, I'm going to marry this woman, and she wasn't the one for him. And then he started putting her opinions over God's opinions. And that was even the fast forward collapse of his leadership.
Crazy when we think about starting off with a topic like moral compromise, how now I'm thinking in my head, how many stories are there in the Bible about moral compromise?
Yeah.
It's probably like one of the main points.
All over
the place. Anyway, well, we hope this, it was kind of cool. This episode was, some of them we go into, we know where it's going to go. We know where it's going to lead. We know the structure it's going to take. This one was not that way. But I like how some of the times the casual conversations even brings out things that we're thinking about that we weren't before. And hopefully it'll do the same for you as you were listening and even later on as you recall it. So check out the Vertical Pursuit app. There's a store on there. Is it on the app or is it on the website?
It's on the app.
There's a store on the app? How did I not know this?
I know.
I got to go buy some gear.
Yeah.
By the way, we're not making a dime off this. So don't think, every time I say the store, I got to say that. We have these qualifiers.
We're losing money, but that's okay.
But
It's called investment.
Yes, right. But I love the idea of, well, and you did, like I said in the last episode, you did a good job of branding Vertical Pursuit. And I love, put on a Vertical Pursuit hoodie, and when people ask you what it is, you can tell them.
Happens all the time.
That's a great place to
Happens
where
all the time.
I just talked about in 2 Timothy. Be ready and prepared in season, and then be prepared to have an answer for what it is and what it means to you. Hopefully, a lot. And we will see you next time on Vertical Pursuit. We invite you to subscribe to our podcast, comment, or message us. And check out our website at verticalpursuit.org. Download the VP app and check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.